So hey everybody, we'll start shortly. I want to say hi to the people that are already with us. Giri, Keegan, Shai. So we'll wait for more people to join us and we will start. And also Tom, and also hello to Shimon and Jeannie. Hey Jared, hey Liz. So happy to see you everybody here. And more people joining us. We will start in a few minutes. No problem. Hey Anna, hey Ariel. So I think we will start in 1 minute. And again, I want to thank you all joining us. And hopefully, in the end of this webinar, you will also get this full reply to your email. So it will be uploaded. So you always can watch it again. But feel free also to interact with us. You have the chat. If you want to raise in, you can do that. If you want to ask question, you can do that. Use the chat on the right, and we will try to answer your questions. So I think we will start. Hello, everybody. My name is Ohad. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Record. We are a support tool that basically enables companies to let their user share issues with them using recording, but not a screen capture. We know how to capture data and animate it to something that can be visualized with all the data needed in order to start solving issues, meaning console log, network issues, and much more information. But this webinar is not about us, but about the value of support data. And today we are hosting Craig. And I'm very happy to have you today, Craig. Craig has spent time in more than 30 countries working with support, development, and professional services teams, building insight into customer experience and engagement. For the past 10 years, I think, he has worked to build strong, effective support and services teams and create top-tier customer experience. He's regular author, podcaster, and speaker in the CX space. And I must say that when I publish things about you, Craig, a lot of other people say, yeah, Craig is amazing. So I'm very happy to have you today. And I think that also the topic that we're going to talk today is very interesting, how we can maximize the value of the support experience using the data we already have. And I think the data is a key here. We also, a data-driven company, really like data. So hello, Craig.
Well, that's a lot to live up to. Thank you so much, Ohad. I appreciate that introduction, and thank you all for joining. I'm really excited to walk through a few short slides here and then have a lively conversation, and hopefully you can take something away and tomorrow start making some changes within your support organization to truly maximize the value of support data. So as Ohad said, my name is Craig Stoss. I am a senior operations manager at a company called PartnerHero, and we are a outsourcing and CX services company that really focuses on companies that really want high quality support. And that leads me into kind of the introduction to this chat. quality has a lot of meanings. And I think a lot of time when we think about quality of support, we think about ticket quality and the measurements of the mechanics of functionally dispositioning a ticket, closing a ticket out and helping our customers, tone, metadata, all those things that tickets have that we fill in. What I'm here to kind of talk about is that there's a level beyond that. There's a level of quality of service that we can do using data. And so what I want to posit to you all today is that the data to improve is already likely available to you. This is something that some people don't believe me necessarily when I say it, but especially in the software as a service model or the IoT model, part of your business model is to collect that data. You know what users are inputting because you own that data. It's in your data warehouse. You know what they're clicking on, etc. You have all sorts of other data sources that you manage. For example, your customer success management tool, your customer relationship management tool. Maybe you have implementation tools or onboarding or training materials that your customers work through. You have a knowledge base. You have tons of things that your customers interact with. And so I'm going to use a very simple and quick example outside of the software space because I want to also show that this isn't just specific to software support. It's across the industry. I used to live in a different city, and in that city there was a restaurant that I would go to semi-frequently. I enjoyed their food, and it was a nicer restaurant, so I typically got a bottle of wine with my meal. But I moved out of that city, and after about 2.5 years, I returned with my girlfriend at the time, and I wanted to show her this restaurant that I really enjoyed. And when I went in, keeping in mind this is 2.5 years since my last visit, the host who was taking us to our table said, "And by the way, Mr. Stoss, we wanted to note that the wine that you typically order with your meal is no longer in our cellar. We would like to make a recommendation of 3 other wines that are very similar, and you can choose from them if you would like something similar tonight." Now, that was really impactful customer experience to me. But one thing that I want to note about that is I would never have called them and said in a survey or in any of customer-facing materials, gone to them and said, "Oh, you need to recommend similar wines to me to what I like." That wouldn't have been a request I would make. But the fact that they had that data, the fact that they had my name, my email address, my reservation, they tied that to previous reservations. Those reservations were tied to receipts that clearly had the same bottle of wine consistently on those receipts. They used data they already had to provide a higher quality customer experience. And that, in my opinion, is the crux of all of this. You have those data points in your company. How do you use them to provide that high level quality experiences that you would expect? So when we think about listening versus understanding, I split this into 2 categories. What customers say, those are explicit things that come to us that are physically and literally said. Things like surveys. We go out to a survey and say, rate this, comment on this. Well, how do you like this feature? Everything from, I received one recently that asked me how clean the retail store that I went to was. These questions could be anything, but it's what we're saying to you. It's what we're giving to you. It could be CSAT ratings. It could be social media posts, Twitter sentiments and things like that. And of course, tickets, the classic example within a support context. But beyond just what the customers say is what the customers give us. They give us a whole bunch of metadata and things that they don't explicitly say, things that we just need to read about, things that we need to study, aggregate, and start to build patterns out of. So these are things like how they use the tools or the products we service. The trends, do they always struggle in this certain area of the product, or are they always always calling in about the same types of issues? All sorts of metadata. How much do they spend with us? When was the last time they had a defect that was fixed? Everything. I mean, the industry that they're in. Are they a public company, a private company? What tier of support are they? Any sort of piece of metadata relating to the customer is stuff that they give us without necessarily explicitly telling us. Things like value drivers and business outcomes. Why do they have our product? Why do they what are the use cases? Why do they want us to to sell to them and have them have us provide value to them. There must be a reason they've purchased our products. What are their expectations? One of the questions I get asked all the time is, what should my average handle time or first response time be? And my answer is always, what do your customers want from you? The analogy I use here is that you wouldn't email the fire department if your house was on fire. You would call them because you would want them to explicitly answer that phone and tell you, we are on our way. But the same way, not all products are that critical that, your house is on fire, you need that immediate response. Some products, like for example, you bought the wrong size t-shirt, that's not a life or death situation. You don't need a 20-second response time in that case. These expectations vary by company, by industry. They vary even by customer type. They vary so differently. And these are what your customers are giving us, is what their expectations are. And of course, sentiment, that's another one that you can capture in many different ways. So I group it like this. What customers say is the voice of customer. And many of you on this call have probably heard of the voice of customer. It's very important that you understand the voice of customer, action the voice of customer, respond on social media, make sure that the changes being recommended in surveys are implemented or at least responded to. Voice of customer is absolutely fundamental to our business, and I would not for a second say that it's not. But what I'm proposing is this idea of the voice of service, which combines the voice of customer, the things that they're saying, with the things that they're giving to us implicitly. And if we combine all of those things, what I think we can do is use the customer as the signal. All of these signals are coming to us all the time through our interactions with customers. And instead of asking what the customer wants from us, infer it from what they give us. You don't need to necessarily be explicit. Some things are explicit, but not everything needs to be explicit. There are things they're implicitly telling you. And that is just as important as the other stuff. So I'm going to put this together in a typical workflow as you think about it from a support perspective, and show exactly what I mean by this. So typically, we start with a single ticket. And in most cases, that is one problem specified by one user's perspective. That could be anything from, how do I change my password, to I want to return this product, to I need a refund for something. It's a single problem from a single user's perspective. And that's the traditional support that probably many of you in this room have done for many years. It's something that we always, we just know about. My first support job back in the late 90s was exactly this. How do I do this technical thing, or this technical thing isn't working? Help me solve that problem. And back then, we didn't have all these tools. Certainly, with the cloud wasn't even a thing. We didn't have this ability to gather data about that, except for asking the customer details. What version of your operating system are you on? What are you doing here? What was the last 5 steps you took? Where did you buy your shirt? We had to ask all those questions because there was really nothing interconnected for us to know anything beyond that without asking explicitly. So in our new world, though, we can connect this to other pieces of information. So, for example, has this user opened previous tickets? What is their overall sentiment about us? We all know that we have customers that are generally negative when they contact support. Maybe we should highlight that and say, hey, this customer has given us bad survey ratings. Is there any survey data they've given us to help us understand this user's opinion about our software, or the types of ways they use the software that are or are not working? And most importantly, as the product actions. This is so important for software support. What are your customers doing? We all know that reliance on customer narrative is bad. This has been proven with psychology, that people are bad at explaining what they've done historically. And so instead of asking them to try to walk through the last 10 steps they took that led to some error, let's use the data that we have and get access to that data from whatever tools we have internally, to be able to look at it and say, oh, I see the last 10 steps you took. I see the error in our log file. I understand what you were doing. I know what widget you were using, what metadata you had inputted into our system. That is so vital in the SaaS and IoT spaces. But then we take it even one step further from that. What about the company? What if this person works for a company where the account health is poor? They're not happy about something. Maybe there's a dispute over the contract or a recent price hike. Maybe they've had a lot of critical errors or a lot of defects opened across the company. We can now combine that user's data with the company they work for. Maybe they're a certain tier of customer. Maybe they use their product slightly differently and have a different business case. One of my favorite ones is tenure. If your customers are having different problems at the start of their tenure with you, maybe new customers, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 2 months, versus customers that have been with you for a year, 2 years, 5 years, well, maybe there's a problem with your onboarding, or it's not intuitive enough for them to start and learn and be successful for your product. You can start to tell those things earlier on. I used to work for a company that was heavily industry dependent. We sold a product that was used across multiple industries, but the industries talked about those use cases very differently, using slightly different terminology. Instead of having to ask the customer, hey, can you tell me what industry you're in, and try to figure out what language they're speaking, have that pop up right directly within your ticket management tool so that you know what language you can use to accommodate this user. There are so many powerful things you can take from this data that you just have sitting somewhere. And with the integration tools that most ticket management systems have, you can pull all of this in together and have a much more contextual conversation with your customer. And finally, tying this to all users, every ticket that's ever opened. One of the most underutilized things I've seen in support is what's not working on the knowledge base. I am always more interested in what people are searching in the knowledge base that isn't finding an article to answer it than what is working. Because if someone is repeatedly across all of these data points trying to find something in your knowledge base and it's not there, you need to ask yourself, should it be there? Do I need to re-tag some articles? You can look at all your previous tickets. Has this problem occurred before? Is this a known defect? Is this a trend? This is so critical when you have, again, back into the SaaS space where you're releasing updates quite frequently. What if all of a sudden for the last 10 minutes you see a spike in a certain feature breaking? Well, that's a pretty good sign that there's a trend that you can immediately surface and say, hey, in the last 10 minutes, something clearly is wrong with this feature. Engineering, we need some help. Product management, we need some help. Escalate those things faster by collating all of that in one spot. And by combining all of this information, the details the customers give you, you can have a much higher quality conversation with your customers. And specifically putting this all together, I think there are 3 areas that we can focus on. And some of them I've already touched on. But I believe that you can have higher context conversations. And by that, I mean personalize the conversation to the person you're speaking to. Speak their language, speak to their skill set, speak to their industry. Know what they've done in your product and the use cases they're trying to solve. Don't focus on the generic solutions or ask silly questions. Personalize those conversations. I know not only generically that you were working with widget X, but I know what you were doing with widget X when the error occurred, and I can speak to your exact example. You can ask fewer questions which leads to lower customer effort. If you've ever read The Effortless Experience by Matt Dixon, this is what they advocate. Reduce all the effort for your support. Remove friction across the entire support experience. And you can do that by not asking questions and not having the end user, the customer, have to do extra work or go back and retry something or go and have to remember something they did before. Answers available faster. This is, again, with all this context combined, you can have automatic searches of your knowledge base, or you can highlight previous tickets that may have the answer in them. And of course, I've already mentioned this several times, know what was being done. You all have log files, you all have history, trends, you all have data that you're using that just sits there that tells a story about what customers do and do not see. Know what was being done and be able to talk about that in a higher context with your customers. The next thing on this list is more proactivity. this is where kind of this passion for data started for me, which was the idea of, stopping errors before they occur. And by that, I mean either making note of it to the end user, the person using your product, or if an error does occur, at least have the answer ready. There are all sorts of ways to stop this. From product changes, hey, we know that this set of features or this set of steps can lead to an error. Development, can we try to change the workflow so that this error can't occur, that we avoid this path or this flow that the customers are taking? Or you can do it through knowledge transfer, in help tabs popping up, guides, things like that. Present solutions in real time. I just touched on that. Better documentation and guidance. And what I mean by that is, again, instead of just writing generic articles, write articles that customers are going to need by using the data you're collecting to write the right articles, such as articles for search terms that aren't working in knowledge bases, I've talked about already. But this could also mean if you know that someone struggles on a particular part of your application, embed something in there to help guide them. Hey, next step, do this, or because you filled in this field, we want you to fill in the next field. Improve product trouble areas. This is, again, another trend where if you see how people use your product and you understand the data that shows where they run into trouble, you can submit that into a developer and an engineering department and have them improve the product in those areas. An example of that that's super simple is I was recently at a conference and I couldn't log into their website. It kept telling me that my email was invalid. And it was perfectly acceptable, my email. And I finally realized that I had a space at the end of my .com space. And I thought to myself, they know that's the error. They know that a space is invalid. Either trim that off or to give me a better error to tell me why you won't let me log into your internet. Improve the product, that would be trimming, or tell me and presenting the solution in real time would be saying, hey, there's a space where there shouldn't be a space. You know what the error is because you're telling me the error exists. But instead of just saying invalid email, try again, tell me something I can do. Guide me. Tell me the solution. For non-technical people, that may not have been as intuitive. And finally, better trends. Where do errors occur? I've mentioned this several times already. What is the trend of why people contact you? Where is the error point in the customer journey? Who is having these issues? Is it a specific demographic, a specific industry? Is it one type of use case that's having those errors? By narrowing that down, you can start to focus your solutions. Google is actually really good at this. If you go to a Google knowledge for Google Suite, if you go to their knowledge base, it will recognize who you're logged in as, and it will actually say, hey, we'll give you this article, but only an administrator can fix this problem, and you are not an administrator. That's incredible, because how many times have all these people and all you on the call search for an answer, got the steps to do it, and it says, hey, click on the settings button. You go to whatever your app is, and there's no settings button. And you're like, oh, I guess I don't have the permissions to do that. Google tells you right up front. If you go to their page, it will say, you can't do these steps, but here are the steps that you could send to someone who can. When do certain issues happen? Again, this is for workforce management and providing better workforce management. Do issues happen at a certain time? Do they happen in a certain period of years? Do you have spiky volume? Do you need to change the way your support hours work? Do you need to have people working overnight or on weekends? When do those issues happen? I've already talked about tenure. This one is the thing that I think is the starting point for most of these conversations. If your newer customers are having different problems than your older customers, you need to fix that. And that could be an onboarding issue. It could be a sales issue. It could be an implementation issue. Something is wrong if the issues are different between those two groups. And of course, product or service changes is what relates to all these trends. If you find these trends, you can improve your product faster. These are some questions that you may be able to answer today. In fact, I would argue that most companies that are in the SaaS or IoT space can answer these almost immediately. I'm not going to go through all of them in the interest of time, But we talked about what widgets cause support contacts. I love this one, factors that correlate to ticket escalation. I did an exercise at a previous company that was a highly technical support. And we did an exercise of 2 years worth of data to determine, could we predict with any certainty whether a ticket would escalate? And what we found, and this is quite unintuitive, is that the number one factor of will a ticket escalate was actually the day of week it was opened. And that might sound very unintuitive, and to me, it was unintuitive too. I would thought handle time, rudeness, sentiment of the ticket, things that we would typically associate, urgency of the ticket, priority. None of those were the top. They were all in the kind of the top 10 or 20, but the number one was day of the week. And when we dug into this, what we realized was it was a highly technical product owned and used by highly technical people who tend to have the persona of wanting to solve their own problems. And so a problem would occur on, say, a Monday. These people with these personas would try all week to solve it. They would bang their heads against the wall, but they wanted to solve this themselves because that was their persona. And then finally on Friday, they would be fed up and they would submit the ticket to us saying, okay, just help me. I'm done. I've spent a week on it. We didn't work on weekends. So we'd come in on Monday and then they would escalate the ticket. And they would say it's taken too long to solve. Well, we were looking at that saying, well, it's only been open for one business day. But to them, the problem has been going on for a week. And that was the number one reason why a ticket was escalated. So what do you do with that information? Maybe you give tickets on Friday a little bit of TLC, or you try to overstaff a bit on Fridays to handle more tickets and try to get more throughput and help the customer experience not have to escalate tickets. What performance factors do your customers value? Is first response time more important, or is politeness more important? We've all heard that analogy of timeliness, quality, or cost. You can only pick two. Well, how do you pick all three? Because if one of those things isn't necessarily important to your customers, you can start to adjust those scales a little bit differently. Where in your tech stack can you integrate things? So I've already talked about several types of things: CRMs, ticket management, implementation tools, logging tools like your backend data warehousing. If you use Elastic for your logs, those types of tools can integrate together and really give you a better picture. What ticket types cost the most to support? This is a really fascinating question, because you could have a ticket that only takes 10 minutes or 20 minutes of your time, but it happens so frequently, it could cost you a lot of money. And therefore, it makes sense to have a solution like an automation or a product fix it. And where are your customers or support agents wasting clicks? This is something a friend of mine taught me years ago, is the idea of looking at where there are wasted clicks. If you are doing the same 5 actions repeatedly throughout your day, how do you turn that into a macro, an automation, something that can reduce those number of clicks, increase the throughput of your agents, and quite frankly, improve employee engagement as well, because no one likes to have to do repetitive, annoying clicks. I threw in this slide just to give you some ideas of tools that use data and can help you improve. I'm not saying you need a tool to do this. A lot of this can be done without specific tools, but there's tools on this, the loops and support logic and operative intelligence that combine and these signals into one place. Codif helps you build smart workflows using data. Assembled can help your workforce management thrive. Idiomatic and Forethought use tagging, and of course Record here, which captures data in real time with video. These are all tools that can help improve the data that already exists and bring that more visibly to you. I hope this was useful. My name is Craig Stoss. Feel free to reach out to me at any of these channels. But yeah, I truly believe that you have the data to drive extreme value and better customer experiences today. And all it is a matter of unlocking that value and finding where you can use it. And thank you very much for listening to me for the past 25 minutes or so.
Yeah, it was amazing. Thank you for that. I think I learned a lot, and I really appreciate the time. When we started this webinar series, I started digging to like support knowledge. Like there is a lot for salespeople, there is a lot for product people, but for support teams, it seems to not to have a lot of content. So this is why we do what we do here, trying to provide some knowledge to the community, and I think it's important. So thank you again for your time. I have some question and some remark on what you said. So first, I think that the data thing is for both sides, right? There is a lot of data for the company, like product teams have the data, also sales teams, like you mentioned. But I think that as a customer support is a customer facing teams, they know the best what the user wants and what the user needs are. And sometimes the success teams and product teams work a lot for the information that the support already have, right? Sometimes there is a lot of data that has to support that need to be shared into the company. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think you're right. The excuse me, the support tends to think about, you know, the big metrics that everyone on this call has heard of: average handle time, first response time, CSAT, you know, any of those kind of metrics that we always hear about, and we report into our executive team, and they're on a slide somewhere, and those are important. But what I find so much more important is the context behind that. So, for example, CSAT is a great example. Let's say CSAT drops by 10 points in a quarter or something to that effect. You know, something that would draw attention to it from your executive team. What do you do to solve that? You could do the generic, you know, rah, hey everyone, let's get CSAT back up. You know, let's look at ticket quality. Let's you know, maybe QA more tickets, or let's you know, let's do a training on tone, or you know, whatever it might be, empathy training. You might throw in generic solutions, and again, all that's fine. I'm not putting that down, but wouldn't it be more interesting to know where CSAT dropped? Did CSAT drop on a specific type of ticket by a specific team? You know, if you support multiple languages, maybe one language was poor. Talk about tenure. Maybe CSAT is poor with your existing customers, but not with your new customers. Well, maybe that changes your direction. Tie those metrics together and share that data. To your point, maybe CSAT's only bad for customers that use widget X of the suite of products you have, or for example. If you tie all that information from product, from customer success, from implementation, from your CRM tool, you can come up with a much better story, and then be much more prescriptive and much more surgical about how you correct it. And so when you build a plan around correcting CSAT, you can go with a very definitive plan of, hey, notice that CSAT only dropped in these two very specific use cases, and we are going to address that by these two very specific things: training, tooling, whatever process, whatever it might need.
Yeah, and I want to keep with that, and like you mentioned a lot about if you find something like a trend or differences between different groups of users, so try to understand what's going on there, and like add tooltips or do for them the job by trim the space after the .com. And it's connected to the previous question about the relationship and the communication between the teams. It seems like a lot of the work need to be done by the product teams or the R&D, and you as a support need to push it internally in order to move things. If you have any tips for maybe big organization, maybe organization that now just started to build their support operation, what would be the best operation way to do that?
So I think it's a staged approach, right? Most of this data, I'll fully admit, exists but is owned by someone else, and so you still have to start with hey, how do I get access to the data? There are tools out there that can help you with that too. I didn't put them on my slide, but there are tools that help you access data in a way that is secure, that you don't have to worry about the complexity of the data in the back end, etc. So step one is just convincing people that you need that data and that you can use it. One way that I've found to do this is to start internally in your own house, in the support house. So don't focus on the product changes. Don't focus on the implementation team changes. Focus on a couple of questions. On that slide, I had some questions, and just answer those questions, show the changes that those questions drove, and then the impact of the change. And by doing that, you can say, this is really what I'm talking about is support operations, right? These are support operations tools. We accept revenue operations exist, dev operations exist, sales ops exist. Support operations is relatively new. But have someone who just looks at these questions, drives a couple of internal projects, and shows value, and take that up to your peers at, in product, your peers in the sales side, your executive team, whoever it is, depending on the size of your company, and say, look, we have a person here designated as our support ops person. That person has done some specific research. We've had this value. Think about it on that next level of, well, what if we had this data from product? What if we had this? And get that buy-in to say, just let's look at it. We're not asking for any commitment from you. We're not asking for new processes. We're not asking for new things yet. We just want to look at some data to do some cool cross-referencing and see what we can come up with. I was at a previous company where there's a tool called Pendo that does measure workflows within a product, a SaaS-based product. And they actually allowed support to have the product team own the product, but support was actually allowed to have full access to it. They just said, if you want to use it, here it is. And so how valuable was that to us to do some of the stuff I talked about in the slides, where a customer calls in and says, well, I submitted this widget and it didn't work. And you could go in and see exactly what they did in the past half hour and say, oh, I see, this widget didn't work because you didn't fill in this field over here. And you could tell that based on the Pendo data that was being delivered back to us. And so even something like that is a good starting point. Then once you get to the stage of wanting to make changes to product or to other teams, there's really two paths. One is every company has some connection. Usually it's like a defect management system of some sort to do this, and you can follow that same process and say, hey, here's another feature for the list, put it on there. Or you could approach it from, this is not really a feature or a defect. This is something that improves us based on whatever's important. So quite often that's money, right? This support ticket is costing us X amount of dollars a year. You could fix it in a week and it will never cost us that again. It's kind of hard. I kind of hate tying it back to money, but that's unfortunately how a lot of teams operate. And you kind of create this category of, it's not a defect or a feature. It's this thing that we need to do because it's important for the business and important for our customers. Of course, all of this works better if the customer experience team has some seat at that executive table and can show the importance of customer experience. I mean, I don't know how many studies I've read over the past 3-5 years that talk about how customer experience is a game changer. Customer support is so vital to your company, and yet we continue to hear, well, support's a cost center. Those two don't work together. You need to look at that data and say, people do want a good customer experience, and then translate that into, okay, well, then we're willing to invest in it. And the way to do that, I think, is to start internally, show that value, and then ask for some more so you can do more valuable things, and then establish a rapport of, why are we doing this thing and how can we do it better?
Totally agree. And I want to finish with two questions. How do you see AI and machine learning entering into the space in a proactive manner? And I had a few conversations with different support people that had different philosophies about that. One of them is that support always need to be humanized. Everything need to be going through a human that give you this human touch in the process. And some others think that we can use AI in order to proactive try to reduce numbers of tickets and providing solution without human in the process. So I want to ask you to different that to two ways. What do you think about AI and machine learning, and what do you think will be the future, and how we're going to use it and utilize it in the support operation? And the second is, what your philosophy about like human touch in this
No,
process?
it's a good question, and um, people who've seen my recent LinkedIn posts know that I've been fascinated with the Chat GPT model
ChatGPT,
that's just been
yeah,
released.
OpenAI. Yeah, I saw
Um,
that.
I mean, in summary, in short, I think that AI is just not quite there yet. I think that it solves some very specific use cases and it's good at those use cases. But as far as generic full support interaction, it's just not there yet for a lot of reasons that we probably could talk for an hour on. But um do what do I see as AI's place in support is was your first question. And the short answer is it's coming. And I feel that if you're a support leader that creates budgets in the next 2 years, to 2023, 2024, you probably should start to be budgeting for some sort of AI, at least research, if not tooling. But it depends highly on your business. So, for example, what I call the airline use case is an interesting one. So, airlines get millions of questions a day, but they're using the same 5 questions. How much luggage can I take on this flight? Is my flight delayed? Can I change my flight? It's the same 5 questions. It's just a million of them. And so instead of staffing that, AI is really good at that. How much luggage can I take? Oh, tell me, are you on an international flight or a domestic flight? Oh, I'm on a domestic flight. Oh, are you an elite or a gold star member or whatever? Yes, I am. Oh, well, then here's your answer. It's very decision tree based, and AI can help get you there. Machine learning can learn those decision trees very easily. And so deflection could be, in theory, very high. Um, but anyone who doesn't have that high repeatability and that high volume is going to struggle with AI, because AI, machine learning and NLP is very much something that's trained through high volume. And one of my biggest beasts with ChatGPT, just bringing that up again because it's something that's in the news right now, is that it doesn't discuss confidence. It gives you the answers to your questions in such a way that you're like, oh, this thing that I'm talking to is very confident this is the answer. But a colleague of mine, or a former an acquaintance of mine and a former colleague of mine, wrote a blog article where he tried to do support with the current Chat GPT model, and of course, it gave wrong answers. It was confident in giving them, but it gave wrong answers. And so that's the detriment, right? Is you have to have a trained model to your model, and that takes time, effort. So it's coming. It will be there, and I think there are specific use cases right now that are really easy to do with AI. QA is a good one. I think it can flag sentiment a lot easier. You can flag things like my example about escalations, potential escalations. You can flag those a lot easier, especially at high volume. But it's not quite there yet. And then to your humanized thing, I mean, I'm a I'm a humanized person. Like I believe in the idea of having that human touch, that empathy. Um, so I think I answer this one usually in the sense of it depends on the nature of your business. Airlines are a good example. Everyone hates air calling an airline. I mean, it's just a thing. It's calling a bank, calling a telecom company, calling a finance an airline. They're always at the top of the examples of things that customers hate to do. So if I can answer my question in a very succinct way with a smooth, decision tree algorithm, or something that's smart, frictionless, that I will take that 100 times out of 100, I will take that path and versus call. So it makes a lot of sense for flights to invest in that. If you're a high end food delivery service, and you want to have that really high quality customer experience that people are engaged, maybe AI is not for you, or at least not in the same way. Maybe AI is in the background aiding your support reps to have a better conversation, as I talked about in my slides, context and more intelligent conversations. But maybe AI is not the solution for you because you want someone on the phone saying, "I'm really sorry that happened. Let me get a truck deliver your food order, immediately to you," or something to that effect. So, like you'll never see. I can't imagine customer support at Louis Vuitton will ever be an AI, right? But when you're paying $3,000 for a purse, you hope someone answers the phone when you call, I would think. So, I believe that the human element of support is not going away for a long, long time. Um, Maybe aided and augmented, but not for a long time.
yeah, we will see. And yeah, and sometimes everything is strategic decision, and you need to think about this when you see the whole picture. I want to thank you again for your time. I can take this conversation to go uh, a lot beyond what we planned, but I think people want to also keep doing what they plan to do. I want to thank you also all the people that came and stay until the end. Thank you for you to be here. Put our I will share record if you want to see our product. We just launched today a new version of it with a lot of ton features, so you can sign up and try for yourself and give us a feedback. We always welcome that. And if you have any issue, knowing that we doesn't have our we always have like to get some feedback also on our support. It's always like funny to take support tool and look on the support of the support tool. So let us know how it goes as well. So thank you again. Thank you, Craig, for giving from your time. It was amazing. And yeah, I hope we will meet in the next webinar. I think it also will be a friend of yours, so it will
Absolutely.
be nice.
Thank you for having me, and thanks everyone for joining. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, bye everyone.
Bye.